Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Big Business Partnerships and OT, Leveraging Your Expertise. My name is Amanda, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at AOTA, and I'm going to point out a few things about today's presentation. First, CE. You can earn one CE contact hour for each webinar attended during Member Appreciation Week. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will receive an email from AOTA Webcast containing a link to your CE certificate. However, you must stay on for the entire webinar until you view the pop-up screen that says the webinar is now over in order to receive your CE certificate email. You will have through December 31st to obtain your CE certificate. Next, questions. On the left side of your screen, you'll see an Ask a Question box. This is for you to type in questions you may have for our presenters throughout the webinar. Questions will be answered towards the end of the webinar, and the presenters will do their best to answer as many questions as time allows. And last, resources. The PowerPoint presentation for this webinar is available for download and can be found in the Event Resources box located just below the Ask a Question box. Simply click on the pull-down arrow to view the document and download. With all that information, let me introduce today's presenters, Kaitlyn Jones and Nancy Peters. Kaitlyn?
Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaitlyn Jones, and today I'm going to be talking about my role as an occupational therapist working in the tech industry. And some of the learning objectives that I hope to cover today are, first, how to identify and navigate potential career pathways from clinical to industry work, how to frame and communicate the unique skill sets that we as OTs have to offer industry stakeholders, and how to navigate the challenges and barriers faced during industry work. So a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Scranton, and currently I work as an accessibility researcher on Microsoft's hardware user research team. I also volunteer as the director of clinical outreach for Warfighter Engaged, and we're a nonprofit where we create custom adapted game controllers and other assistive technology for severely injured veterans, typically following injuries like amputations or traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injuries. And we do a lot of 3D printing and custom hardware. And then I also have a very small caseload of pediatric clients as well. So a really common question that and I'm sure a lot of the OTs who are working in more non-traditional roles get asked is, what was the process of making the transition into industry, and kind of how did that happen? And to be completely upfront, I wish the answer to that was, Microsoft just had a job posting that said OT wanted, but that's not really how it went down. And a lot of it had to do with just kind of being in the right place at the right time and fostering the connections that came as a result of that. So it all started with Warfighter Engaged, which I just mentioned, and it's a nonprofit that my father, who's a mechanical engineer, and I run together. And we were doing a lot of work out of Walter Reed, which is a big military medical center in Bethesda, Maryland. And he was doing a lot of things that involved cracking open Xbox controllers and knowing how to wire different pieces and buttons from them together. And ultimately, he was able to create, and still does create, controller rigs and setups that even quadruple amputees could access to play. So if you look at this picture in the top right corner here, you'll see a series of buttons and 3D printed housing that are oversized joysticks and bite switches. And underneath the table, there's a series of levers that this individual is able to access with his residual limb. He's above the knee amputee of both legs. And one day, a Microsoft employee actually came across our nonprofit's Twitter page and saw the work that we were doing and asked, how they could help us do it to scale, since it is very time-consuming and we're a small nonprofit. So they flew us out to their campus for an event called a hackathon. And essentially, during the hackathon, Microsoft employees get to take 1 week out of their day jobs and work on a passion project that solves a need in the world. So they brought Warfighter Engaged out to partner with them on this hackathon project, and ultimately, about 3 or 4 years later, that gave birth to the Xbox Adaptive Controller. And for those that aren't familiar with the Xbox Adaptive Controller, it's in this bottom left-hand picture here. And essentially what it does, it acts as a hub or a brain, and you could take any kind of switch or peripheral that's either USB or a 3.5 millimeter jack, and it has all of these external ports on the back that map to a button on a standard controller. and you're able to, whether you're a caregiver or a gamer, just be able to plug and play and use what peripherals you want without having to have that engineering or kind of electrical background. So essentially through the partnership with Warfighter Engaged, as well as Erin Musson-Firsch from Craig Hospital, and Erin's feedback was very instrumental in the actual form factor of the adaptive controller, including the rounded edges on it, as well as the angled nature of it if you look at it from the side. So through these partnerships, Microsoft's accessibility team met occupational therapists and worked with them for the first time and kind of caught wind of the unique skill sets that we have to offer when it comes to working with people with disabilities, and seeing that we know how to adapt and hack technology to meet their needs. And ultimately, I think they realized that had they consulted with OTs kind of earlier down the pipeline, there would be no need for us as OTs to hack, and rather the product would be accessible off the shelf, hopefully. And, a good example of this is a lot of times we have to tape a piece of string into a loop on the inside of a laptop. So somebody with limited dexterity who can't pry the laptop lid open with their fingers could just slip their wrist inside of it. And again, instead of an OT having to hack that, what if OTs just worked with the designers of the laptop to ensure that the mechanism for opening was easier to begin with? So again, through this partnership and with working with the accessibility team there and people like Erin, working with all the folks at Microsoft, they realized a need for our input, and luckily they had a desire to bring me on as one of their team members. So some of the current roles on my team that an OT is able to perform and bring a really unique insight to are first being a user researcher, which is my primary function, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Secondly, a lot of what we can do is providing foundational education to the engineers and designers at the company. As OTs, we're subject matter experts on the spectrum of disability and a wide range of diagnoses and how they affect the way that somebody's able to interact with a piece of technology, whether this has to do with their ability to physically hold it and manipulate it, or their ability to see the screen or hear the audio output, or even cognitively understand how to perform the tasks that they want to on the device, depending on how good the feedback or how well laid out the instructions the device is given them. So, a lot of times in the tech industry, you're talking to engineers and designers who have no or very little prior experience working with and interacting with people with a certain type of disability. So as someone with OT experience, we're able to provide that foundational knowledge to them. A lot of times this education has also come in the form of writing documentation and manuals for how to practice inclusive design and just in general how disability affects a person's ability to enjoy or not enjoy the products that Microsoft makes. I also get to help run a space called the Inclusive Tech Lab, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but it's another position that lends itself really well to an OT doing. And last, and probably my favorite thing to do in this position, is being able to interact with the community. So our team partners with as many local hospitals and clinics as we can. We have a saying in the disability community, nothing about us without us. And what we mean by that is we don't want to be designing products for people with disabilities, but rather be designing products with people with disabilities. So Harborview Medical Center is a hospital in downtown Seattle. It's a really big partner of ours, and part of the work that we did was going to their hospital and working with their therapists on how to use the Xbox Adaptive Controller with their patients, and then being able to partake in their monthly game nights and community outings and things like that. So I talked about how one of the roles of an OT at Microsoft is to help run our Inclusive Tech Lab. Actually, I'm going to backtrack to this picture right here. And the Inclusive Tech Lab is a space where, from the very get-go when they were designing it, they made sure that it was accessible and inclusive throughout all living and breathing aspects of the room. So the first thing not pictured in here is actually our door. And the first time they did the door, they made it to ADA standards, 32 inches. And we had somebody in a power chair try to come through it, and it was still like threading the needle. It just wasn't enough. So we actually ripped the door out and put in a door 3 times the width of that to make sure that this space is really, really inviting for the gamers with disabilities and people that we bring in here. If you look at this picture on the left here, you can see all of these desks. They're all adjustable height. So regardless of what somebody's lap height is, we could bring the desk up and down to them. You know, you'll notice there's no legs or wires or anything like that that'll get in the way for them. If you look at this picture on the right, you'll notice that the couches are super bright and they contrast highly with our dark floors for when folks with maybe low vision come in, and all the lights in the ceiling are adjustable color. So we could literally change every single light bulb in the room to meet the needs of maybe somebody's visual needs or sensory needs and whatever that they feel most comfortable with. And recently our team wanted to repurpose one of the corners of the tech lab, and they asked what we should do with it. And I feel like as a company, Microsoft has explored a lot in the realm of hearing and vision mobility, obviously with the adaptive controller, but we know that we as OTs, we frequently tackle sensory processing and people on the autism spectrum. So I pitched that we'd build a sensory or a snoozlin room, and now Microsoft actually has a sensory space on their campus, and it's a very, very base level version of a sensory room. Obviously, we don't have any squeeze machines or swings or anything like that, but it definitely sets the intent for the space, and it gives us a platform that when we do bring in designers and engineers and game developers and talk about the fact that people's sensory needs also affect the way that they interact with technology is equally as important as that tactility or the physical aspect of it. So, you know, if the keys on a keyboard are too clicky, that could be irritating to somebody, or the noise that a pen makes against scratching the tablet surface. Is the user interface have a lot of bright colors and is really loud, or, you know, is anything else distracting about the product itself that we could limit, like notifications popping up and things like that. So back to the user research side of things, what my entire team does, both those who are focused on accessibility and those who aren't, is we help get feedback on unreleased products. So whatever is the next laptop or headphones or whatever is coming down the pipeline from Microsoft, our team brings in participants. We give them the new product, run them through a series of tasks, and then ultimately get feedback on what they felt was good and what was bad and what worked and what didn't. Give that feedback back to the design team and then hopefully iterate on that product to make it better. But for our accessibility studies, obviously the participants that we bring in are people with all different types of disabilities. So as an OT, that's really lended itself well to inform that process. And it starts with recruitment and kind of knowing what types of disabilities are relevant to test with a product. So a lot of times we'll get an ask that just says, you know, we want accessibility feedback from the low mobility community on our new Xbox packaging. Low mobility is obviously pretty broad. So knowing that somebody with a C2 spinal cord injury is probably not a good candidate for an unboxing study, even though it seems obvious to us. Or even just thinking to put a disclaimer in their recruitment announcement that if you can't grasp and lift something 10 pounds or more, which is the weight of an Xbox console, then please don't offer to participate in our study, because obviously we don't want anybody hurting themselves. And then conversely, if we're not given a specific ask, but we do want accessibility feedback anyway, as OTs, we're constantly using our activity analysis skills. So we could look at a product or a piece of technology and automatically be able to identify the types of functional deficits that someone could have that might interfere with their ability to use the product. So if you look at these pictures of the Surface headphones here, on the top right picture, when I first saw that, I immediately thought about how somebody with a spinal cord injury who tends to use their knuckles or, you know, their thenar eminence area to interact with things, it's going to be really hard to press a button that's that small and that flush with the surrounding surface with your knuckle. You could also see the USB-C port on the side next to those buttons and how that might be problematic for somebody with poor fine motor skills or even limited dexterity and poor coordination. vision as well, and how it might be difficult for them to plug in and plug out a cord of that size. But conversely, them using USB-C was also actually a win, because unlike USB-A, where you have to plug it in and it's not going in right, so you have to flip it, USB-C is not orientation specific, so it is easier for some people to be able to plug it in and out. Same with the dial. In the lower right picture, you'll see that the way that you raise and lower the volume is through this twisting mechanism, and thinking about, can somebody get a grasp on that dial? And if we ever do make a new pair of headphones, can we put a notch on that dial so somebody could have a better grip or a better grasp on it? I think as OTs, one of the biggest areas of comfort that we have are actually interacting with people with disabilities during the study, bringing them into a space, knowing which buildings are going to be most accessible to run your study in, and even just how to help a participant with a disability physically get to campus, whether it's knowing that they'll need a cabulance or whether or not they can navigate the bus on their own. And then when you're actually running the study itself, like knowing where to mount switches or knowing where to put the device in space so the participant can access it. So if we're testing the software of a tablet and the person can't physically access the device, maybe they need eye gaze or switches, we're not going to be able to get the feedback on the software unless somebody knows how to mount things and where to put things in space and what technology is needed in order for that person to interact with it. And then finally, as OTs, we're really good at being advocates. And a question that I get asked a lot at big tech companies is, what's the business case for this? Or how many people are going to use this? And when you're talking about statistics, like, yeah, we have a statistic for how many people there are living with a spinal cord injury, but somebody with a spinal cord injury, as we know, could face very similar dexterity issues to a ton of other conditions. So as OTs, when we're sharing out this information, we talk less about the business case and statistics and try to emphasize more of the human and whole person factor that's benefiting from it, and how an accessible product impacts quality of life as opposed to just money and business. So a stat that I always like to talk to people about is that picture in the way beginning of my slides of that amputee using the adapted gaming rig. He's only one person. So statistically, one person's not a very big business case, but he games for 10 hours a day. That's what he spends the majority of his day doing, and missing that piece of his life would be a huge detriment to his quality of life. He also, when you game that many hours a day, you buy a lot of games because you burn through them quickly. So maybe that's your return on investment that a big company cares about, but ultimately, how are we advocating and how does that scale towards a business case, and why is that important? As an OT in the tech industry, there's still a lot of barriers, and as OTs in general, we tend to be misunderstood. A lot of people still don't know exactly what we do, and we still find ourselves having to explain, what we are. And I still find myself having to advocate for myself daily that OTs could bring really useful insights to the team, and that we do have an expertise that's really valuable despite not having the same background as everybody else at the company. And it's definitely pretty difficult coming together with people from a completely different background than your own, because you're both experts in two almost really conflicting principles. So our priority as OTs is function and ease of access, but the priority of a designer might be sleekness and aesthetics and creating the best machine for the most amount of people, and not necessarily for a very specific use case or a specific type of disability. So I remember the first design meeting that I sat in on for a Surface laptop. We were talking about how it's difficult for people with poor dexterity to open our laptop lid. Apple laptops have a finger scoop and ours don't. So I sat there in a room full of engineers who have years of experience designing laptops and said, if we would just make our laptop easier to open so it's not like a clamshell, so many more people with disabilities would be able to work and go to school and enjoy our products. And they responded with, we understand that and we appreciate that, but we've actually run hundreds of studies over the years of research we've done that show that the amount of force it currently takes to open our laptop is just enough that it's easy to be open, but it doesn't unintentionally open in your backpack and die on your way to work. So while it's a big learning process for technology people to learn more about disabilities from us, it's been just as large of a learning curve for us to learn about design process and how big businesses work, how things are funded or not funded, and why things are designed a certain way for underlying reasons that aren't necessarily obvious when interacting with the product. And I think one of the most important skills that I had to learn pretty quickly was also just how to communicate and speak a common language with the people that I was working with. When I first got here, I was really overwhelmed by all of the tech acronyms and complicated terminology that they were using. And I realized that for me to use complicated medical terminology back, it was kind of almost the same thing, and we weren't really meeting each other halfway. So at the end of the day, I realized that unfortunately it was less effective to try to teach somebody what cerebral palsy or any other diagnosis is, because it could vary so greatly from person to person, and we don't want people getting hung up on trying to understand a knowledge base that took us years of schooling and clinical experience to master. So instead, the way that we frame things is through the lens of human diversity factors, and then we link those back to individual products or technology use demands. So instead of saying to an engineering team, let's design this to be accessible for somebody with CP, a way that we approach it is simplifying things down. So let's solve this for somebody with poor coordination who has difficulty using a mouse and cursor accurately, or let's solve this for somebody with difficulty with speech output and clarity of speech, and their voice isn't being picked up by our dictation software. Same thing with different types of visual impairments. So, to walk into a room and say a lot of fancy medical diagnoses didn't and won't get us very far. We have to learn how to make things tangible and relevant in order to get those wins that we want. And then something else was also just adjusting to industry timelines. As OTs, we're kind of used to seeing progress, hopefully, in our patients from session to session, but the Xbox Adaptive Controller took 4 years to come out. So just getting used to how different the timelines are there and how much longer it takes to see kind of the fruits of your labor. So like I mentioned, making the transition into a large tech company can be kind of difficult, especially if you didn't have the same coincidental connections like I guess I did. But for somebody that does want to go into this route, I'd say there are a few good ways to do it. The first would be looking for a contract role. So a lot of these tech companies like Microsoft and Google, they hire for positions called vendor positions, and they're basically external hires. They still work on campus and they have badge access, but they're not full-time direct employees. And in some ways, the vendor roles are almost more exploratory because you're typically on a 1-year and 18-month contract. So if a company does like your skill set, but they're not entirely sure, they can bring you on as a vendor as almost a test run. So that's definitely one way to get your foot in the door, and that's what I'm currently doing right now. There's also a lot of need for researchers and going the research route. And I will say for most large tech companies, the minimum requirement that they're looking for is a PhD, but the research route is also really exciting and helps to inform accessible design and products. I would also say if you are really interested in being more ingrained into the design process, having an additional degree in psychology or human-computer interaction, user experience, and things like that are really helpful in setting you apart, improving, at least on paper, because unfortunately your paper resume is really important in a really competitive industry when applications are so competitive and you have recruiters sorting through hundreds of resumes, that having a degree in this background in addition to your OT degree kind of sets you apart and proves that you have some of the skill sets that the company looks for. There's also always consulting roles. So even though you're not a full-time employee, just consulting on specific projects and giving feedback here and there based on something new coming down the pipeline. But regardless of the setting or the mechanism for entry, I would say working in the tech industry it's been difficult, but it's also been really exciting. And I'm really excited for us as a profession to continue to make our way into more non-traditional roles, and we definitely have a lot to offer. And thank you guys so much for attending, and our next speaker is up next.
Hello, my name is Nancy Peters. Kaitlyn, that was fascinating. I have been an OTR for 45 years. I've been a member of the AOTA during that time, and I have worked in hospitals, school systems, and rehab. I graduated from the University of Buffalo. The learning objectives today will be the story of the invention and development of MagZip, the patent process, the process of obtaining license agreements with IDL, our zipper manufacturer, and Under Armour, and the future of DNS designs. Our story started in 2005. We received a patent on our zipper in 2012, and clothing with our zipper was available for purchase in 2013. We started working with my son, Scott Peters, who is an engineer. We got together in 2005 to try to solve my brother's dressing problems. I have a brother who has myotonic dystrophy, and he was having increasing difficulties with his fine motor coordination, which was impacting his independence and his dressing independence. So we really wanted to help him. We decided that we would focus on zippers, and we felt that magnets were a part of the solution to make the zippers easier for somebody with fine motor challenges to do. We had been working on the design when we were actually at our cottages on Lake Ontario. We were at a campfire, and our neighbor came and joined us. His name is Dave Leindecker, and he's a mechanical engineer and talented designer. And that evening became a huge discussion about what we were trying to accomplish, and we decided at that point that he would join us in trying to solve this problem. The motto of our business is innovations to improve your life. This is a brief history of the zipper. The first zipper-like invention was in 1893, and it did not meet with much commercial success. They debuted it at the World's Fair in Chicago. And then in 1913, the modern zipper was designed by Gideon Sunback, who worked at the Universal Fastener Company. And then Gideon in 1917 received a patent for a separatable fastener. At that point, it was only used in galoshes, boots, and tobacco pouches. They weren't even thinking about using it in clothing. But then in 1925, a company in New York City put it on leather jackets. Again, it was not a widespread use. And in 1930, some children clothing manufacturers used the zipper. But the big boost came in 1937 when French fashion designers started using it in men's trousers. So it took 20 years for this novel closure to be used in the clothing industry. Currently, thousands of zipper miles are produced daily. So zippers hadn't changed significantly since 1913. Until we came up with our idea. Ours can be used one-handed with gloves on, with people with fine motor difficulties and coordination problems. When I did a task analysis of our zipper, it was 2 steps instead of 7 steps for a traditional zipper. I had applied for a grant and was using a task analysis, which is a OT skill, to support it. Our zipper is universal design. We named it Quick Zip. UA changed the name to MagZip. This is our zipper. It can be used in any application that a traditional separating zipper is used. The base is what changed. It's used on regular zipper tape. Our inspiration was really to solve my brother's problem, but we could see that there's a lot of people that had trouble with zippers. And I would like you to look at this video. This is a kind of tells our story.
My name is David Finger. I am currently a swim coach with the Stingray Swim Club, and was diagnosed with myotonic dystrophy at 19 years old. And lining up the teeth. Well, I don't know if I can even do that. I was given a jacket with the new magnetic zipper, and in the past 2 years I've been using it, and it works wonderfully. It was a godsend. And you can see that my strength is not there, but I am pulling up the zipper, and it went together much easier than the conventional zipper. It's that simple.
And I was thinking, what if Under Armour just developed and went out, and this was after a session where I was zipping my jacket up and my zipper split at the bottom. You know that situation, your zipper breaks and comes apart, or the thing doesn't zip, or you can't get it to go. And I'm just cussing the zipper, saying there has to be a better zipper in the world.
Quick Zip is the magnetic zipper that we have developed, and originally it was developed to help my uncle.
As an occupational therapist, I thought about the people that I work with, such as those with arthritis and strokes, and realized that this zipper was made zipping accessible to them again where they couldn't do it before. But then I started to show it to my grandchildren and my friends, and they're all enthused because it was easier for them to do. And I realized that young children in kindergarten, they can't usually do zippers, would be able to do this zipper, and sports enthusiasts would be able to do this zipper with their gloves on. And we realized this zipper can help everyone. It's simpler, it's universal design, it's a whole new concept.
Well, our first prototypes were fairly complex. We come up with a very elegant, simple, very manufacturable solution.
We were able to improve it to where it is today, which is a pretty streamlined and awesome product. As we showed more people, though, the universal response was, wow, that thing's cool. And it was really exciting for us to show friends and family and other people and really get this awesome response. And I think we started to realize that the market is huge, and with skiers and snowboarders and hunters and all these other people, that there's really a pretty strong desire for a better zipper out there. And we think we've got that.
So as you can see, that was our inspiration. It took a lot of time and patience to get us to that point. We had weekly meetings for years. We would have phone meetings one time a week, 9 p.m. Wednesday nights. Sometimes we'd be on the phone for half an hour, sometimes for 3 hours, while we were trying to figure out how to make a manufacturable product and how to get it out to the public. We would all take tasks, and then we would report back on them the next week. The way we tested it was that we would make up prototypes, and I would sew them in jackets. I would test it on my brother to see if he could actually do the zipper. And then I would report back to Dave and Scott what the problems were, and they would redesign. We'd make some more prototypes. We actually made hundreds of prototypes in this process. At the time, we did not have a 3D printer. They were not as available as they are now, and they were very expensive. So we would have engineers produce each of those prototypes at about $100 a piece. So as we were also trying to figure out how we were going to finish the product, get it to market, we recruited expertise from other professions. We did a lot of phone calls and a lot of consulting with fashion designers, other engineers, military people, business people, lawyers, marketing firms. And we also used local programs to help us move through this process. New York State had a small business developmental center that they were having it's free meetings at a community college between where Scott and I lived, and we would go to those meetings and learned a lot about setting up a business and getting products to market, and about product development. We used a business incubator called High Tech Rochester that provides startup resources, and we used resources from local universities. We ask ourselves these questions about our product, and the answers to these questions made us think that the general public would benefit from our zipper. We wanted to get some data to use when we were soliciting companies to work with us, so we decided to do some surveys and market research. So we would be able to present this information to the companies to talk them into working with us. We contacted a consumer psychology and marketing research firm to evaluate potential markets for our zipper. This is around 2008. They looked at the medical market, those who find traditional zippers difficult to use, specific age groups in some niche markets such as skiers or hunters, and then they prepared this report for us that we could use when we were contacting companies, and they estimated the market size for our zipper was 132,524,508 people. So, and the zipper industry is greater than a $7 billion industry in annual sales, so it's a big industry. We also wanted to get some specific information about users, and so we contacted the Rochester Institute of Technology, a local university, and they had a technology commercialization clinic, and they took on evaluating our product with the public as their project for one semester. We put zippers and jackets of various sizes, and the RIT students went out into the community and had people try it and give them feedback on what they thought of our zipper. This is the results of that, the survey that the RIT students did. There was over 200 people that participated, and it was easier to use by over 88% of those tested. So with this information, we were ready to go to some companies and see if they would work with us to get this zipper to market. So we also at the same time were pursuing a patent for our product, even though the zipper design wasn't fully developed. As soon as you apply for a patent, you have some protection. This is called patent pending or a preliminary patent, and it would give us some protection for a year as we finished the design and made sure that our product was patentable because it was unique enough. We hired a patent agent because all of us were working other jobs, and we figured that was the most efficient way to go. You do not have to hire an agent to get a patent, you can do it yourself, you can have your best friend do it, you can hire a patent lawyer. So our patent agent hired a team to research patents to see if our idea was unique and would be patentable. We told him what we thought was special about our product, and he wrote up our patent in technical terms. And then we applied for our utility patent. It's good for 20 years, and it needs to be renewed yearly. We also applied for PCTs, which are patent cooperation treaties, and those are to protect us internationally. And we received our patent. We got our first utility patent in 2012, and then we got a second one in 2015 because of improvements. And now we have patents in over 10 countries. We wanted to get our zipper to market, and so we had a task list. We had started a website. We needed to finish the website, and we needed to determine cost to manufacture zippers at middle volumes. We also needed to make presentations to give to the clothing companies and zipper manufacturers, and the video that you saw earlier was one of those presentations that we had prepared. We needed to meet with these companies to convince them to work with us so that the people that needed or wanted the zipper could get it. So these are the companies that we decided to work with initially. We decided on them because either we felt that they were a good fit for our zipper, or we had a contact with one of the companies. We were able to meet with many of the brands in their offices in New York City. Initially, LL Bean had showed some interest in our zipper, and they didn't end up going with us. It was not fully developed at the time we were working with them, but they did donate jackets that we used with the RIT student study, and they did test it in a group of people with developmental disabilities that they work for. We also at this time flew to Ideal and presented our zipper. They liked it, but weren't ready to commit. They felt it was too risky to produce the zipper if we didn't have a clothing company committed to using it. But it ended up that Ideal and Under Armour were the companies that we were able to partner with. This is a story of how we ended up partnering with Under Armour. This was around 2012. And Under Armour had a team trying to design an improved zipper, but they were not having success. People working for Under Armour were doing a patent search about zippers, and they found us. They contacted our patent agent and asked about our IP, which is our intellectual property, a category of property that includes intangible creations of the human intellect. And they got our contact information. A representative from Under Armour called Scott, flew up, and met with us and our patent agent. We showed him the prototype, and he was interested. He went back to Under Armour and advocated for us and got us invited to Under Armour's first Innovation Day called Future Show. We presented there, and Kevin Plank, their CEO, and his team were excited. We were given a term sheet. We hired a lawyer to write up a licensing agreement, and now we both really needed a zipper manufacturer. So at this point, Ideal reconsiders. We reapproached Ideal, and we knew we needed both Ideal and UA to get our zipper to market. Ideal is one of the largest U.S. zipper manufacturers and had worked with Under Armour before. Under Armour took on some of the financial risks, such as the cost of new molds, to produce our improved zipper base. With these new developments, Ideal was willing to work with us. We needed our patent lawyer to start working up a licensing agreement with Ideal also. Now we had a team to get our better zipper in the hands of those who needed it or wanted it. We were able to negotiate fair terms for all, finding the right risk and rewards. We worked with Ideal to finalize the design for manufacturing. We needed to work 2 separate but cooperative licensing deals, and it was hard. Luckily, we had an excellent patent lawyer to represent our best interest. Together, UA, Ideal, and DNS projected exclusivity, volumes, and royalties. Our zipper was on its way several years after we started this adventure. We were able to stay fully involved with the manufacturer and further development of the zipper, which was important to us. So now at this point, as soon as the deals were complete, UA released this video announcing our zipper. So now, after UA signed on and released some press, we had our 15 minutes of fame. We were on Inside Edition and highlighted in numerous print articles such as USA Today, OT Practice, ARP, Wired, and Fast Company magazines, and numerous local newspapers and publications. Although it was not our initial idea to have a company like Under Armour sign with us, it got our product to market, and we've had a lot of feedback from people who can't do traditional zippers that are really helped by our zipper. What now? UA's exclusivity has expired. We're working with new brands such as Tommy Hilfiger, Target, Callaway, Black Yak, Montclair, and others. We're continuing to improve and reduce the cost of the zipper. We're working on other closures that are universal designs, such as snaps, buttons, and buckles. We also have individual zippers for sale to put in clothing if people want to adapt the clothing they already have, our own hoodies, and innovative zippers pulls on our website. Thank you very much. If you want to contact us or are interested in our zipper or sweatshirts with our zipper in them, please go to our website, www.magneticzipper.com or www.dnsdesignsllc.com. Now it's time for questions. Kaitlyn, would you like to take the first one?
Yes, thank you. So the first question is, wouldn't all of the accessibility features also be useful for our aging population, which I think is really relevant to both presentations? And the answer is definitely yes. That's something that I probably didn't emphasize as much as I should have. But when we are talking with the design and engineering teams, even if they can't relate or don't personally know anybody with a disability, they could all relate to the fact that every one of us is going to get older and start having the same accessibility barriers. So definitely yes to that question.
Okay, the next.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the next question I have is, what are some other industries besides tech and clothing that you foresee OT getting involved in? And I guess this would be a question for both of us, right, Kaitlyn?
Mm-hmm.
I am thinking that there are a lot of household chores that could be helped by our intervention, such as kitchen devices and also even appliances. And I just think that all design could be helped by OTs being involved in it. And I think OTs and engineers working together is great. Do you have anything to add, Kaitlyn?
I definitely agree with that. Just anything that requires using those activity analysis skills to make something better or easier for somebody is an area we could weigh in on for sure.
Do you want me to take the next question?
Sure, you could go ahead.
Okay. I have been talking about needing a magnetic zipper for years. How do I get this? It is not listed on the description of the jackets that are coming up on the website. So if you go to either one of the websites that are mentioned on this question slide, Magnetic Zipper or DNS Designs, there is zippers for sale. We have individual zippers for sale, and also we started offering people to send their jackets to us, and we can have the zippers put in them. But really, if you get our zipper, you can usually go to any tailor or dry cleaner, and they can put our zipper in the person's garments.
Awesome. So the next question I had was, how many OTs work with you, and are there any quotas? And the answer is no. Currently, I'm the only OT that's working here right now, but hopefully there will be more of us soon.
Okay, the next question I have is your zipper nylon and or metal, and have you any interest from Chinese businesses? Right now, our zipper is nylon. We are working on a metal version of it because actually the firemen have been interested in it, and I do think a zipper easier to do would be good for them, but they have to have a metal zipper, and so we are working on that right now. And actually, as far as Chinese businesses, one of that Black Yak business is actually Korean, and they have been using our zippers a lot. So yes, we definitely have had some international interest.
Awesome. The next question I had was about how many years of experience I had out of school before obtaining this non-traditional position, and whether or not I think it's something that a newish grad could or should pursue. So before and during OT school, I had years of experience working with veterans and working with adapted gaming and adapted tech. But when it came to how much experience I actually had in terms of like after my field works and after actually getting out of OT school, really only a couple of months. So not as much as I would have liked. And I think had I not had those years of experience with hands-on working with tech due to the nonprofit, I really probably would not be a good fit for this position and wouldn't be able to weigh in and have the knowledge base that was needed for it. So I think that it's something a newish grad could pursue, but I would say that the clinical experience and hands-on experience you have of actually being an OT is really invaluable when it comes to informing this kind of work. So if it is something that you're really interested in, but you work a typical OT job for a number of years before going that route, it's probably a really good thing to do.
Okay, the next question I have is, it seems that it took a long time to research and refine the zipper to its final product. Was it a costly process too? I'll answer that and then I'll answer the rest of this. So the problem with the zipper was that we needed to develop a locking device that was manufacturable. Because we could see, once we got this for my brother, we could see that it was really helpful for people in that most zippers are pretty challenging. And so that was what took a lot of time, really, was developing that locking feature. It was costly, but not unbelievably costly. And it was nice because there was 3 of us, so we would all just keep putting money in, as we needed to. I guess probably one of the biggest costs was doing all the prototypes. But a lot of people donate, like LL Bean donated us jackets that we could, put our zippers in and trial. So it wasn't too bad. When did your company start to make money? We did not start to make money until UA started producing clothing with our zipper in it. So That was probably, so we started this in 2005, and that was probably about 2013 or 14 that we started to actually make a profit.
Great. The next question that I have is, being that OT in the tech industry is still a new idea, do I think there's any or know of any fieldwork opportunities for students to start getting exposed to this? I've got asked this question quite a few times about students who are really interested in a fieldwork opportunity. The answer right now is I would probably say no, given the current nature of at least specifically my day-to-day role. I do spend a lot of time sitting at a desk and writing documentation or attending meetings for products that Microsoft tends to keep pretty locked down. So right now I don't think so, but I think hopefully as this becomes more common, maybe there will be more opportunities. And that's another reason that I mentioned I do some pediatric work on weekends and evenings, is just to keep up with my clinical practice and continue to actually be an OT as well, outside of just doing tech desk sitting jobs some of the time.
Okay, the next question that I have is, what type of OT did you start in, clinical community research, and why did you move into non-traditional? So I actually started in hospital, and I did that for a while, and then I moved into the school system. So it's one thing I love about OT is that you can move around a lot and still use a similar skill set. And I would say that moving into the non-traditional was just maybe frustration, because although the American Disabilities Act went into effect in 1999, there was just so many places where that weren't universal design, and I just wanted to make a difference, I guess.
Awesome. The next question that I had is, how can an OT or a CODA who's interested join my team? The answer right now is that we don't have any current positions open. So I would say that the best way to do it is kind of like how I mentioned previously, looking for open contractor roles and things like that throughout the company that kind of fit the needs of what we could offer. And my contact information is also on the PowerPoint. So if anybody has any specific questions, feel free to email me as well.
Okay, my next question is, have you thought of forming a partnership with a big online company such as Amazon? And we have thought of that, and we've researched it. We have some information on it, but I guess we didn't feel like it was a really good fit right now. And although we do not have exclusivity with any of our companies now, we work pretty closely with our zipper manufacturer at this point, and they actually have a lot of contacts with companies, and we have some contacts with companies. So I guess we feel like working with clothing manufacturer companies is the way to go. Now, that being said, we did start offering hoodies on our website, because hoodies, I think, are great for people to be able to do, especially if you are missing a limb or something. They're really hard to do without two hands, and with ours you can. And nobody at this point was producing a hoodie with our zipper in it. So I guess we're always open to new things, I guess.
Hi, Nancy. If you want to just answer the last couple of questions, and then we'll end the webinar.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, I just saw that. Sorry. Okay, does Under Armour still sell products with MagZip? And they do still sell products with MagZip, but they are not putting it in as many products as they were. And so So we're grateful that these other companies are coming on board, and actually we're always, it seems like we're always talking to new companies that are interested. Okay, and the next question I have is, do you know if these zippers can be covered by insurance? I do not know that. I kind of doubt it because I know you need a special code for it and stuff, but yeah, but I don't know that answer for sure. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and please go to our website or email me if you have any further questions.
So I just wanted to thank Nancy and Kaitlyn for presenting today. Thank all of you for attending, and of course, thank you for being an AOTA member. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.